Introduction to the Harsh Realities of Slavery. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day 3 of our exploration into the poignant history of slavery in the Americas. Today, we delve into the stark realities of life under the oppressive grip of slavery. Our focus will be on the living conditions, labor systems, and daily lives of enslaved individuals, shedding light on the distinctions between urban and rural slaves, as well as the differences between regions. Furthermore, we will unravel the complexities of family structures, cultural preservation, and resistance within the enslaved community, highlighting the indomitable spirit that flourished even in the darkest of circumstances. Understanding the lived experiences of enslaved people is crucial to grasping the full impact of slavery as an institution. It is through this lens that we can see the human cost of this system of oppression. Today's examination goes beyond the economic and political implications of slavery, focusing instead on the personal, everyday realities that enslaved individuals endured. By exploring their daily lives, we gain a deeper appreciation for their resilience and the ways in which they navigated and resisted their circumstances. To begin, let us consider the overall environment in which enslaved people lived and worked. Their existence was marked by deprivation and a constant struggle for survival. Enslaved individuals were typically housed in cramped, substandard quarters that were often nothing more than makeshift shacks. These living spaces lacked basic amenities such as clean water, proper sanitation, and sufficient ventilation. Privacy was a luxury few could afford, as families were often forced to share small, overcrowded spaces. The physical environment was harsh and inhospitable, contributing to the overall suffering of enslaved people. Their diet further exacerbated these harsh conditions. Enslaved people were usually provided with meager rations that barely met the minimum nutritional requirements. Cornmeal, lard, some vegetables, and occasionally meat comprised their primary diet. This lack of nutritional variety led to numerous health issues, including vitamin deficiencies and malnutrition. The physical toll of their inadequate diet was compounded by the grueling labor they were forced to endure. The labor systems under slavery were designed to maximize profits for slave owners, often at the expense of the physical and emotional well-being of those enslaved. Enslaved individuals were regarded as property, to be bought, sold, and exploited for the benefit of their owners. They were subjected to intense labor across various industries, including agriculture, mining, and domestic work. Plantation work, in particular, was incredibly labor-intensive, with enslaved individuals working long hours under harsh conditions to cultivate crops like cotton, tobacco, and sugarcane. The physical demands were immense, and the threat of punishment loomed large for those who could not keep pace or resisted their exploitation. These brutal realities were not uniform across all enslaved individuals. The experiences of slavery varied significantly depending on location, type of labor, and regional differences. Urban slavery, for example, offered different challenges and opportunities compared to rural plantation slavery. In cities and towns, enslaved individuals often had more opportunities to interact with free people, access informal markets, and earn wages through skilled trades. However, these urban environments also posed unique challenges, including constant surveillance and the potential for exploitation in different forms. Rural slavery, predominant in agricultural regions, was characterized by relentless labor on plantations. The nature of plantation work required intense physical exertion and exposed enslaved individuals to severe exploitation. Regional differences also played a significant role in shaping the experiences of enslaved people. The Deep South, known for its large plantations and harsh conditions, contrasted with the Upper South, where the conditions, while still brutal, were comparatively milder. In understanding these varied experiences, we begin to see the complexities of slavery as a lived experience. It is crucial to recognize that, despite the overarching system of oppression, the daily lives of enslaved individuals were shaped by a multitude of factors, including geography, labor demands, and the disposition of individual slave owners. As we proceed through today's examination, we will delve deeper into these aspects, exploring the intricate ways in which enslaved individuals navigated their harsh realities. We will uncover stories of resilience, resistance, and cultural preservation that highlight the indomitable human spirit even in the face of unimaginable adversity. Living conditions of enslaved individuals. The living conditions of enslaved individuals were marked by deprivation, exploitation, and a constant struggle for survival. This stark reality defined their daily existence and served as a persistent reminder of their lack of freedom and humanity. Understanding these conditions is essential to comprehending the full scope of the suffering and resilience that characterized their lives. Enslaved individuals were typically housed in crude, substandard quarters that reflected their owners' disregard for their well-being. These living spaces were often small, one-room shacks made of wood, with dirt floors and poorly constructed walls. Ventilation and insulation were virtually non-existent, exposing the inhabitants to extreme temperatures, whether the scorching heat of summer or the biting cold of winter. The lack of proper shelter contributed to the high rates of illness and mortality among enslaved populations. Privacy was a rare luxury. Multiple families or groups of individuals were often crowded into a single cabin, leading to cramped and uncomfortable living conditions. The close quarters made it difficult to maintain any sense of personal space or dignity, exacerbating the stress and discomfort of daily life. This overcrowding also heightened the spread of diseases, as infectious illnesses could easily move through these tight-knit communities. In addition to inadequate housing, enslaved people were subjected to meager and nutritionally deficient diets. Slave owners provided rations that were designed to sustain basic physical labor but often fell short of meeting nutritional needs. Cornmeal, lard, some vegetables, and occasionally small amounts of meat constituted the primary diet of many enslaved individuals. Fresh fruits, dairy products, and other sources of essential vitamins and nutrients were rarely included. This lack of variety and nutritional balance led to widespread malnutrition and associated health problems, such as scurvy, pellagra, and other deficiency diseases. The physical toll of these inadequate diets was compounded by the grueling labor that enslaved individuals were forced to endure. From dawn to dusk, they toiled under the watchful eyes of overseers who demanded maximum productivity. Plantation labor, in particular, involved backbreaking tasks such as planting, cultivating, and harvesting crops like cotton, tobacco, and sugarcane. These tasks required continuous, strenuous physical effort, often under harsh weather conditions. The relentless nature of this labor left little room for rest or recovery, leading to chronic exhaustion and a high incidence of injury and illness. Healthcare for enslaved individuals was rudimentary at best and often completely lacking. Medical care was typically provided by fellow slaves or by slave owners who had no formal training in medicine. Enslaved individuals were rarely afforded the luxury of proper medical treatment, even for severe injuries or illnesses. Instead, they had to rely on traditional remedies and the limited medical knowledge available within their communities. This lack of adequate healthcare resulted in high mortality rates and a constant state of poor health among the enslaved population. The psychological impact of these living conditions cannot be understated. The constant exposure to violence, deprivation, and the threat of punishment created an environment of fear and anxiety. Enslaved individuals lived under the constant strain of knowing that any perceived disobedience or failure to meet labor expectations could result in brutal punishment. This atmosphere of terror was intended to maintain control and suppress any attempts at resistance or rebellion. Despite these oppressive conditions, enslaved individuals demonstrated remarkable resilience and resourcefulness. They developed ways to cope with their circumstances and find moments of respite and humanity amid their suffering. Enslaved communities often came together to support one another, sharing resources, knowledge, and emotional support. They engaged in cultural practices, such as music, storytelling, and religious rituals, that provided a sense of continuity and identity. These practices not only helped to preserve their cultural heritage, but also served as acts of resistance against the dehumanizing conditions imposed upon them. In conclusion, the living conditions of enslaved individuals were defined by deprivation, overcrowding, inadequate nutrition, and a lack of proper health care. These harsh realities were compounded by the psychological trauma of living under constant threat and exploitation. However, the resilience and ingenuity of enslaved individuals allowed them to endure and resist these conditions, maintaining a sense of community and identity in the face of unimaginable adversity. This examination of their living conditions provides a crucial context for understanding their struggles and the enduring human spirit that persisted despite the oppressive system of slavery. Labor systems and exploitation. The labor systems that defined the institution of slavery were meticulously crafted to maximize profits for slave owners while systematically dehumanizing the enslaved individuals. Understanding these labor systems and the exploitation that accompanied them is critical to grasping the full scope of the brutality and resilience within the enslaved community. Enslaved individuals were regarded as property, chattel to be bought, sold, and exploited without regard for their physical or emotional well-being. The various labor systems they were subjected to, spanning agriculture, mining, and domestic work, were characterized by relentless toil, physical abuse, and psychological oppression. In the agricultural sector, particularly on plantations, the labor demands were intense and unceasing. Enslaved individuals worked from dawn until dusk, performing tasks that required continuous, strenuous physical effort. In the cultivation of cash crops like cotton, tobacco, and sugarcane, every stage of production, planting, tending, harvesting, and processing, involved grueling manual labor. Cotton plantations, for instance, required enslaved people to pick cotton under the searing sun, with overseers enforcing brutal quotas. Failure to meet these quotas often resulted in severe punishment, including whippings and other forms of physical abuse. The cyclical nature of agricultural work meant that there was rarely any respite. The end of one season seamlessly transitioned into preparation for the next. Beyond the fields, enslaved individuals were also forced into various forms of skilled and unskilled labor. On larger plantations, some were assigned to roles such as blacksmiths, carpenters, or cobblers. While these positions required specific skills and sometimes offered a slight reprieve from the grueling fieldwork, they did not shield individuals from exploitation or abuse. The skills of enslaved artisans were exploited to maintain and improve plantation infrastructure, yet they received no compensation or recognition for their labor. In addition to agricultural labor, enslaved people were also subjected to mining work, particularly in regions rich in natural resources like gold, silver, and coal. Mining labor was notoriously dangerous, with enslaved individuals working in hazardous conditions, often deep underground. The physical toll of mining, combined with the constant threat of cave-ins, explosions, and toxic exposure, resulted in high injury and mortality rates. Domestic labor represented another significant facet of the labor systems under slavery. Enslaved individuals working in homes were responsible for a wide range of tasks, including cooking, cleaning, childcare, and laundry. While domestic slaves were often in closer proximity to the slave owners and their families, this did not equate to better treatment. Domestic workers were subjected to constant scrutiny, long hours, and the whims of their owners. The invasive nature of this work meant that domestic slaves had little privacy and were always at the beck and call of their masters. The exploitation inherent in these labor systems extended beyond physical demands to psychological manipulation and control. Enslaved individuals were systematically denied education and literacy, a deliberate strategy to prevent them from gaining the knowledge and skills that could lead to rebellion or escape. Despite this, many enslaved people sought clandestine ways to learn to read and write, understanding that literacy could be a powerful tool for resistance and empowerment. Furthermore, the constant threat of family separation was a pervasive tool of control. Enslaved individuals lived with the ever-present fear that they or their loved ones could be sold away at any moment, a tactic used by slave owners to suppress dissent and maintain order. This fear of separation underscored the precarious nature of enslaved life and the profound cruelty of the system. The relentless exploitation of enslaved labor was not met without resistance. Enslaved individuals engaged in various forms of subtle and overt resistance, from work slowdowns and sabotage to escape attempts and revolts. These acts of defiance, though often met with brutal reprisals, demonstrated the unyielding spirit and agency of enslaved people in the face of relentless exploitation. In conclusion, the labor systems under slavery were meticulously designed to extract maximum profit through the severe exploitation of enslaved individuals. Whether in the fields, mines, or homes, the labor demanded was unending and brutal, marked by physical and psychological abuse. Despite these oppressive conditions, enslaved people found ways to resist, demonstrating resilience and a fierce determination to reclaim their humanity. This exploration of labor systems and exploitation provides a vital understanding of the daily realities and enduring spirit of those who lived under the yoke of slavery. Urban versus rural slavery. The experiences of enslaved individuals varied significantly depending on their location, particularly when comparing urban and rural slavery. While both environments were marked by exploitation and oppression, the dynamics of daily life, opportunities for resistance, and the nature of labor differed considerably. Understanding these distinctions is crucial to gaining a comprehensive view of the lived realities of enslaved people in the Americas. In urban areas, slavery took on a unique character shaped by the dense population and economic diversity of cities and towns. Urban enslaved individuals often had more varied roles compared to their rural counterparts. They worked as domestic servants, artisans, laborers, and in some cases, skilled tradespeople. Domestic slaves in urban households performed tasks such as cooking, cleaning, and childcare. These roles, while still demanding, provided some enslaved people with closer proximity to the enslavers' families, which could sometimes result in marginally better living conditions and food quality. Skilled enslaved workers in urban settings often labored in trades such as blacksmithing, carpentry, and tailoring. These positions required specialized skills and sometimes allowed enslaved individuals to interact with a broader segment of the free population, including other artisans and clients. This interaction could offer urban slaves a slightly greater degree of autonomy and mobility, as they might be hired out by their owners to work for others in the community. The wages earned, however, went to the enslavers, with only a small fraction sometimes given to the enslaved worker. The urban environment also provided enslaved individuals with greater opportunities for cultural exchange and social interaction. Cities had more diverse populations, including free Black communities, immigrants, and indigenous people, allowing for a richer cultural milieu. Enslaved people in urban areas could sometimes access informal markets to trade goods, gather information, and build networks that could be crucial for planning acts of resistance or escape. Despite these opportunities, urban slavery was fraught with its own set of challenges. The close proximity to their enslavers and the constant surveillance in densely populated areas meant that urban enslaved individuals were always under scrutiny. The risk of punishment for perceived disobedience or attempts at resistance remained high. Moreover, the competition for limited resources and opportunities could create tensions within the urban enslaved community. In contrast, rural slavery, particularly on large plantations in the agricultural regions of the South, was characterized by intense physical labor and isolation. Enslaved individuals on plantations were primarily involved in the cultivation of cash crops such as cotton, tobacco, and sugarcane. The work was grueling and relentless, with long hours spent in the fields under harsh conditions. Plantation slaves typically lived in crude, overcrowded quarters that offered little respite from their demanding labor. The isolation of rural plantations created a different social dynamic compared to urban slavery. Enslaved communities on plantations were often tightly knit, relying on each other for support and solidarity in the face of extreme hardship. Family ties and communal bonds were essential for survival, as the threat of separation through sale was a constant worry. Enslaved people on plantations developed rich cultural traditions, including music, dance, and religious practices, which provided a sense of identity and resistance against the dehumanizing conditions imposed upon them. Regional differences also played a significant role in shaping the experiences of enslaved individuals. The Deep South, with its vast plantations and brutal labor demands, often imposed harsher conditions compared to the Upper South, where smaller farms and diversified labor roles were more common. These regional variations influenced everything from the nature of work to the structure of enslaved families and the opportunities for resistance. Despite the severe exploitation in both urban and rural settings, enslaved individuals continually found ways to resist and assert their humanity. In cities, they used their mobility and interactions with diverse populations to gather information and build networks. In rural areas, the tight-knit communities fostered solidarity and cultural preservation. Acts of resistance ranged from subtle forms of defiance, such as work slowdowns and sabotage, to more overt actions like escape attempts and revolts. In conclusion, the experiences of enslaved individuals were profoundly shaped by whether they lived in urban or rural environments. Urban slavery offered more diverse labor roles and social interactions, but was marked by constant surveillance and competition for resources. Rural slavery, particularly on plantations, involved intense physical labor and isolation but fostered strong communal bonds and cultural resilience. Understanding these distinctions highlights the varied and complex realities of enslaved life and underscores the enduring spirit of resistance and resilience among enslaved people in the Americas. Regional differences in slavery. The institution of slavery in the Americas was not a monolith. It varied significantly across different regions, shaped by local economies, social structures, and climates. These regional differences profoundly influence the lives of enslaved individuals, affecting everything from the type of labor they performed to their living conditions and the forms of resistance they could employ. By examining these regional variations, we gain a deeper understanding of the diverse experiences of enslaved people and the ways in which they navigated the oppressive systems in which they were trapped. In the Deep South, the large-scale plantation economy dominated. States such as South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana were characterized by vast plantations dedicated to the cultivation of cash crops like cotton, sugarcane, and rice. The labor demands on these plantations were immense and relentless. Enslaved individuals in the Deep South often worked from sunrise to sunset, enduring the grueling tasks of planting, tending, and harvesting crops in harsh, hot climates. The physical toll of this labor was severe, with many enslaved individuals suffering from exhaustion, heat stroke, and chronic injuries. The plantation system in the Deep South also necessitated a high degree of control and surveillance. Enslaved individuals were subjected to brutal discipline to maintain order and productivity. Punishments for perceived infractions were swift and severe, including whipping, branding, and other forms of corporal punishment. The constant threat of violence created an atmosphere of fear and oppression, designed to suppress any thoughts of resistance or rebellion. Despite these harsh conditions, enslaved people in the Deep South developed strong communal bonds and cultural practices that provided solace and a sense of identity. They preserved African traditions through music, dance, religious rituals, and storytelling. These cultural practices were not only a means of cultural preservation but also acts of resistance against the dehumanizing conditions imposed by the plantation system. Through shared cultural expressions, enslaved individuals maintained a sense of community and resilience. In contrast, the Upper South, including states like Virginia, Maryland, and Kentucky, had a more diversified economy. While agriculture remained a significant component, it was not dominated by large plantations to the same extent as the Deep South. Enslaved individuals in the Upper South often worked on smaller farms, engaged in a variety of tasks, including growing tobacco, wheat, and hemp, as well as performing skilled labor in industries like ironworks and shipbuilding. The labor demands in the Upper South, while still harsh, were generally less intense than those on the large plantations of the Deep South. This region also saw a higher proportion of enslaved individuals working in skilled trades and domestic roles, providing a somewhat broader range of experiences. The proximity to urban centers like Richmond and Baltimore offered enslaved individuals in the Upper South more opportunities for interaction with free Black communities and participation in informal economies. Family structures in the Upper South were also slightly more stable, though still precarious. The threat of family separation through sale was ever present, but the smaller scale of farming operations meant that enslaved individuals were sometimes able to maintain stronger familial and community ties. This stability provided a crucial foundation for cultural and social life among the enslaved population. Further north, in the border states and the North, slavery existed on a much smaller scale and in different forms. While these regions did have enslaved populations, their numbers were significantly lower, and the economic reliance on slavery was not as pronounced. Enslaved individuals in these areas often worked in domestic service, small-scale agriculture, and various trades. The relative proximity to free states and Canada provided greater opportunities for escape, and the abolitionist movement was more active, offering support networks for fugitive slaves. The regional differences in slavery were also influenced by the legal and social frameworks of each area. Laws governing slavery varied from state to state, affecting everything from the rights of slave owners to the treatment and punishment of enslaved individuals. These legal differences created a patchwork of experiences, with some regions offering slightly more protections or avenues for resistance than others. In conclusion, the regional differences in slavery in the Americas were profound and multifaceted, shaping the daily lives and experiences of enslaved individuals in significant ways. The harsh, labor-intensive conditions of the Deep South contrasted with the more diversified and, sometimes, less oppressive environment of the Upper South. Further north, the presence of slavery, while still brutal, offered different challenges and opportunities. Understanding these regional variations is essential to appreciating the complexity of slavery and the diverse strategies of resilience and resistance employed by enslaved people across the Americas. Family structures under slavery. The family structures of enslaved individuals were profoundly impacted by the oppressive system of slavery, yet they also became a source of strength, resilience, and resistance. Despite the constant threat of separation and the harsh conditions imposed by slaveholders, enslaved people endeavored to maintain familial bonds and create supportive communities. These efforts to preserve family and kinship ties were acts of defiance against a system designed to dehumanize and control them. Enslaved families were frequently subject to the whims of slave owners, who viewed them as property rather than human beings with intrinsic worth. The buying and selling of enslaved people often led to the forced separation of families. Husbands and wives, parents and children, siblings, no familial relationship was safe from the auction block. This threat of separation was a deliberate strategy employed by slaveholders to weaken bonds and minimize the potential for collective resistance. Despite this, enslaved individuals placed immense value on family ties and worked tirelessly to preserve them. Marriages, though not legally recognized, were common among enslaved people. These unions were often solemnized through rituals and ceremonies that reflected African traditions and provided a sense of cultural continuity. The stability and emotional support provided by these marriages were crucial for coping with the hardships of enslavement. Spouses supported each other emotionally and practically, sharing the burdens of labor and strategizing for survival. Parent-child relationships were equally vital. Enslaved parents faced the dual challenge of raising their children under the constant threat of separation and ensuring their survival in a hostile environment. Mothers and fathers imparted life skills, cultural knowledge, and values to their children, often through storytelling, song, and communal activities. These practices helped maintain a sense of identity and continuity across generations. Teaching children about their heritage and instilling resilience were forms of resistance against the erasure of their cultural identity. Extended kinship networks also played a crucial role in the lives of enslaved people. Given the precarious nature of nuclear family units, extended family members and fictive kin, individuals who were not related by blood but were considered family became essential sources of support. These networks provided practical assistance, such as childcare and sharing food, as well as emotional and social support. They also facilitated the transmission of cultural practices and knowledge, helping to preserve a collective identity. Enslaved individuals often went to great lengths to maintain contact with family members who were sold away. They used the limited mobility allowed to them, such as during trips to markets or on errands, to pass messages and gather information about loved ones. The use of clandestine networks to communicate and keep track of family members showcased the ingenuity and determination of enslaved people to sustain familial bonds. Religion also played a significant role in reinforcing family structures among the enslaved. Many enslaved people adopted and adapted Christianity, infusing it with African spiritual practices and beliefs. Religious gatherings, whether sanctioned or clandestine, provided a communal space where enslaved individuals could express their faith, find solace, and strengthen their familial and communal ties. These gatherings often served as opportunities to plan acts of resistance and solidarity. Despite the efforts of enslaved people to maintain their families, the reality of slavery imposed severe limitations and heartbreaks. The trauma of family separations left deep emotional scars and had long-lasting effects on individuals and communities. The resilience demonstrated by enslaved families in the face of these adversities, however, highlights their strength and the central role of family and community in their resistance to dehumanization. In conclusion, family structures under slavery were a complex interplay of resilience, resistance, and trauma. Enslaved individuals placed tremendous value on their familial and kinship bonds, viewing them as essential sources of strength and identity. They navigated the constant threats of separation and dehumanization by creating and maintaining supportive networks that preserved their cultural heritage and provided emotional support. The preservation of family ties, despite the oppressive conditions of slavery, stands as a testament to the enduring spirit and humanity of enslaved people. Cultural preservation among enslaved people. In the face of relentless oppression, Cultural preservation among enslaved people became a crucial act of resilience and resistance. The systematic dehumanization and attempts to strip away their cultural identity by slaveholders were met with the steadfast determination of enslaved individuals to maintain their traditions, beliefs, and practices. These cultural elements not only provided a sense of identity and community, but also served as a means of psychological survival and resistance against the brutality of slavery. One of the primary ways enslaved people preserved their culture was through music. Music played a central role in the daily lives of the enslaved, serving as a source of comfort, a means of communication, and a tool for maintaining African traditions. Spirituals, work songs, and field hollers were not only expressions of pain and hope but also a way to transmit cultural knowledge and history. These songs often incorporated African rhythms, melodies, and call-and-response patterns, creating a sense of continuity with their ancestral heritage. Music was also used to covertly convey messages and organize resistance, demonstrating its dual role as both a cultural and a strategic tool. Storytelling was another vital aspect of cultural preservation. Oral traditions were central to African cultures, and enslaved people continued this practice in the Americas. Through stories, fables, and proverbs, they passed down knowledge, morals, and cultural values to younger generations. These narratives often featured themes of cunning and resilience, reflecting the enslaved people's own experiences and strategies for survival. Characters like B.R.R. Rabbit, who used wit to outsmart stronger adversaries, symbolized the cunning required to navigate the treacherous world of slavery. Religious practices also provided a crucial means of cultural preservation. Many enslaved individuals adopted Christianity, but they infused it with African spiritual beliefs and practices, creating a unique blend known as African American Christianity. This syncretic religion included elements such as call-and-response preaching, spirited singing, and communal worship, all of which echoed African religious traditions. These practices not only provided spiritual solace, but also reinforced communal bonds and a shared sense of identity. Religious gatherings, whether officially sanctioned or held in secret, were spaces where enslaved people could express their faith, find support, and plan collective actions of resistance. Traditional crafts and artisanal skills were another way enslaved people preserved their cultural heritage. Skills such as basket weaving, pottery, and quilting were passed down through generations, maintaining a tangible connection to African cultural practices. These crafts often carried symbolic meanings and were used in everyday life, reinforcing cultural identity and continuity. For example, quilting circles became spaces for communal bonding and the transmission of cultural stories and symbols. Language also played a significant role in cultural preservation. Enslaved people created Creole languages and dialects that blended elements of African languages with English, Spanish, French, or Portuguese, depending on the region. These languages served as a means of communication within the enslaved community and preserved linguistic elements from their African heritage. The development of these unique languages demonstrated the adaptability and resilience of enslaved people in maintaining their cultural identity despite the oppressive environment. Culinary traditions were another important aspect of cultural preservation. Enslaved people brought with them agricultural knowledge and cooking techniques from Africa, which they adapted to the ingredients available in the Americas. Dishes such as gumbo, rice and beans, and okra-based stews have roots in African cuisine and became staples in the diets of enslaved communities. These culinary practices not only sustained them physically but also provided a sense of cultural continuity and comfort. In conclusion, cultural preservation among enslaved people was a multifaceted and dynamic process that involved music, storytelling, religion, crafts, language, and culinary traditions. These cultural practices were not only acts of resilience, but also forms of resistance against the dehumanizing system of slavery. By maintaining and adapting their cultural heritage, enslaved individuals affirmed their humanity, created a sense of community, and forged a legacy of strength and endurance. The preservation of culture in the face of such extreme adversity highlights the indomitable spirit of enslaved people and their profound impact on the cultural landscape of the Americas. Acts of resistance. In the oppressive system of slavery, acts of resistance by enslaved individuals were widespread and varied, reflecting their enduring spirit and desire for freedom. These acts ranged from everyday forms of defiance to organized rebellions, each representing a significant assertion of agency and humanity in the face of dehumanization. Everyday acts of resistance. Everyday acts of resistance were subtle yet powerful forms of defiance that disrupted the smooth operation of the slave system. These acts included work slowdowns, feigned illnesses, and sabotage of equipment. By slowing down their work pace, enslaved individuals could reduce their productivity, which directly impacted the profits of slaveholders. Pretending to be ill or injured allowed enslaved people to avoid the harshest labor, providing some respite from their grueling tasks. Sabotage was another common form of everyday resistance. Enslaved individuals might break tools, damage crops, or set fire to barns and other property. These acts of sabotage were risky, as they could result in severe punishment if discovered. However, they were effective in undermining the plantation economy and expressing defiance against the system. Cultural resistance. Cultural resistance played a crucial role in preserving the identity and humanity of enslaved people. By maintaining their traditions, languages, and practices, enslaved individuals resisted the efforts of slaveholders to strip away their cultural heritage. Music, dance, and religious practices were vital components of this cultural resistance. Enslaved people used these forms of expression to communicate, celebrate their heritage, and foster a sense of community. Religious gatherings, often held in secret, provided opportunities for enslaved individuals to bond, share their struggles, and find spiritual strength. These gatherings also served as spaces for planning acts of resistance and escape, highlighting the intersection of cultural and strategic defiance. Escape and the Underground Railroad. Escape was one of the most direct and bold forms of resistance. Enslaved individuals who fled their bondage risked severe punishment or death if captured, but the promise of freedom drove many to attempt escape. Some fled individually, while others organized group escapes. The routes to freedom varied, with some heading north to free states or Canada, while others sought refuge in maroon communities in swamps, forests, or mountains. The Underground Railroad was a crucial network that assisted fugitive slaves in their journey to freedom. This clandestine operation involved a series of safe houses and secret routes maintained by abolitionists and sympathetic individuals, both black and white. Notable figures such as Harriet Tubman played significant roles in guiding enslaved people to freedom, risking their lives to help others escape the horrors of slavery. Revolts and rebellions. Organized revolts and rebellions were the most dramatic and dangerous forms of resistance. Enslaved individuals who participated in uprisings aimed to overthrow the system of slavery and achieve freedom through collective action. Some of the most well-known revolts include the Stono Rebellion, 1739, in South Carolina, Gabriel's Rebellion, 1800, in Virginia, and Nat Turner's Rebellion, 1831, in Virginia. These rebellions were met with brutal reprisals, often resulting in the execution of participants and increased repression of enslaved populations. Despite the risks, the willingness of enslaved individuals to rise up and fight for their freedom underscores their determination and bravery. Intellectual and ideological resistance. Enslaved people also engaged in intellectual and ideological resistance by pursuing education and literacy, despite strict prohibitions. Learning to read and write was a powerful act of defiance, as it equipped individuals with the tools to articulate their plight, organize resistance, and envision a future beyond slavery. Literate enslaved individuals could forge passes, read abolitionist literature, and communicate covertly, enhancing their ability to resist and escape. Conclusion: acts of resistance among enslaved people were diverse and pervasive, ranging from everyday defiance to organized rebellions. These acts demonstrated their resilience, courage, and unwavering desire for freedom. Each act of resistance, no matter how small, was a powerful assertion of humanity and agency against a brutal system designed to oppress and dehumanize. The legacy of these acts of resistance continues to inspire and inform contemporary struggles for justice and equality. Psychological impact of slavery. The psychological impact of slavery on enslaved individuals was profound and multifaceted, encompassing a wide range of emotions and experiences. The constant threat of violence, the trauma of family separation, and the pervasive dehumanization inflicted deep psychological wounds. Yet, within this context of relentless brutality, enslaved people demonstrated remarkable resilience and developed coping mechanisms to navigate their harsh realities. Trauma and fear. Fear was a constant presence in the lives of enslaved individuals. The threat of physical punishment, sexual violence, and family separation loomed large. The arbitrary nature of these punishments, inflicted for perceived infractions or simply at the whim of the enslaver, created an atmosphere of chronic anxiety. This environment of unpredictability and violence led to deep-seated trauma, manifesting in symptoms such as hypervigilance, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. The trauma of family separation was particularly devastating. The sale and forced relocation of family members shattered familial bonds and inflicted profound psychological pain. The fear of losing loved ones at any moment created a persistent sense of grief and helplessness. Enslaved individuals coped with these losses by forming new kinship networks and relying on community support, but the scars of separation were enduring. Dehumanization and identity struggle. Enslaved individuals were systematically dehumanized, treated as property rather than people. This dehumanization was reinforced through brutal discipline, the denial of basic rights, and the constant assertion of white supremacy. The psychological toll of being regarded and treated as less than human was immense, leading to feelings of worthlessness and internalized oppression. Despite this, many enslaved people maintained a strong sense of identity and self-worth. Cultural preservation played a critical role in this process. By holding onto their traditions, languages, and spiritual practices, enslaved individuals affirmed their humanity and resisted the narratives imposed by their oppressors. The ability to see oneself as part of a larger, resilient community helped counteract the corrosive effects of dehumanization. Coping mechanisms and resilience. The psychological resilience of enslaved individuals was remarkable. They developed a variety of coping mechanisms to manage the extreme stress and trauma of their lives. Community and kinship networks were vital sources of support. These networks provided emotional and practical assistance, fostering a sense of solidarity and mutual aid. The communal nature of life among enslaved people, despite the forced separations and disruptions, offered a buffer against the isolation and despair that the enslavers sought to impose. Religion was another crucial coping mechanism. Many enslaved individuals embraced Christianity, infusing it with African spiritual practices to create a unique and empowering faith. Religious gatherings offered a sense of hope, community, and a framework for understanding their suffering. Spirituals and religious songs expressed both the pain of their condition and the hope for liberation, providing psychological solace and strength. Music and storytelling also played essential roles in coping with the psychological burdens of slavery. These cultural practices allowed enslaved individuals to express their emotions, share their experiences, and maintain a sense of continuity with their heritage. Through music and stories, they could articulate their pain, resistance, and aspirations, creating a shared narrative that sustained their spirits. Resistance as psychological empowerment. Acts of resistance, both large and small, were not only physical but also psychological acts of empowerment. Every act of defiance, from work slowdowns to outright rebellion, affirmed the humanity and agency of enslaved individuals. Resistance offered a way to reclaim control and assert one's dignity in an environment designed to strip it away. The knowledge that they were actively resisting, even in the face of severe repercussions, provided psychological empowerment and reinforced a sense of self-worth and community solidarity. Conclusion: the psychological impact of slavery on enslaved individuals was devastating, characterized by fear, trauma, and dehumanization. Yet, through cultural preservation, community support, religious faith, and acts of resistance, they demonstrated extraordinary resilience and psychological strength. These coping mechanisms and strategies of resistance were essential in navigating the brutal realities of slavery and preserving their humanity in the face of relentless oppression. The legacy of their psychological resilience continues to inspire and inform contemporary understandings of trauma and resilience. Triumph of the human spirit. As we conclude our exploration into the lives of enslaved individuals, it is essential to recognize the profound resilience and strength that characterized their existence despite the unimaginable hardships they faced. The triumph of the human spirit under the brutal conditions of slavery is a testament to the enduring capacity for hope, resistance, and community. This resilience is not merely a response to adversity, but an assertion of humanity in the face of dehumanization. Endurance and resilience. Enslaved individuals demonstrated remarkable endurance in their daily lives, navigating an oppressive system designed to break their spirits. Despite facing relentless physical and emotional abuse, they managed to maintain their dignity and sense of self-worth. The sheer ability to survive and find moments of joy amidst suffering speaks to their extraordinary resilience. The creation and maintenance of family bonds, the preservation of cultural practices, and the pursuit of freedom through both subtle and overt resistance are all expressions of this resilience. Cultural vitality. Cultural preservation was a cornerstone of the enslaved community's resilience. Music, storytelling, religious practices, and artistic expressions were not merely distractions from suffering but essential components of their resistance. These cultural elements provided a means for enslaved individuals to assert their identity, maintain a connection to their heritage, and foster a sense of community. The rich tapestry of African American culture that emerged from this period is a testament to the strength and creativity of those who endured slavery. Acts of resistance. The acts of resistance, whether everyday defiance, cultural expressions, escape attempts, or organized rebellions, highlight the refusal of enslaved people to accept their subjugation passively. These acts of resistance were not only practical strategies for survival, but also profound affirmations of their humanity and agency. Each act of resistance, no matter how small or large, contributed to the larger struggle against the institution of slavery and asserted the fundamental right to freedom and dignity. Psychological strength. The psychological resilience of enslaved individuals was as formidable as their physical endurance. The ability to cope with the severe trauma of slavery through community support, religious faith, and personal resolve reflects an extraordinary strength of spirit. Enslaved individuals developed coping mechanisms to manage their trauma, maintain a sense of identity, and preserve their mental well-being. Their capacity to maintain hope and assert their humanity, despite the systemic efforts to strip it away, underscores the profound nature of their psychological resilience. Legacy of resistance. The legacy of resistance and resilience among enslaved individuals extends far beyond the period of slavery. Their acts of defiance, cultural contributions, and enduring spirit have had a lasting impact on subsequent generations and the broader struggle for civil rights and social justice. The narratives of bravery and resistance continue to inspire and inform contemporary movements for equality and justice, highlighting the enduring relevance of their experiences. Inspiration and reflection. As we reflect on the lives of enslaved individuals, it is crucial to acknowledge the triumph of their spirit and the lessons it imparts. Their experiences remind us of the capacity of the human spirit to endure and resist in the face of overwhelming adversity. The stories of their courage, resilience, and community provide powerful examples of strength and solidarity. By honoring their legacy, we not only recognize their suffering but also celebrate their indomitable spirit and contributions to our shared history. Commitment to justice. The triumph of the human spirit under slavery also serves as a call to action. It challenges us to confront and address the lingering legacies of racial injustice and inequality. Recognizing and honoring the resilience of enslaved individuals compels us to work towards a more just and equitable society. By understanding and acknowledging their experiences, we can strive to build a world that values and upholds the dignity and humanity of all individuals. Conclusion. The exploration of life under slavery reveals a narrative of immense suffering but also remarkable resilience and strength. The triumph of the human spirit among enslaved individuals is a testament to their enduring hope, resistance, and community. Their ability to maintain their dignity, culture, and resolve in the face of dehumanizing conditions is a powerful reminder of the capacity for resilience and the importance of continuing the struggle for justice and equality. Their legacy continues to inspire and guide our efforts towards a more equitable future.